Benjamin can have love for the truckie. Beautiful minds, but we love getting ugly. Risk takers with a clover, man, we love getting lucky. You run, we chase fire, I love when it ducks me. Tones go off, house watch, read the address out. 1075, get up off the magic couch. 500 gallons prepared for the baddest drought. Who else you want on the way when disaster's out? Can't even get a little bit rattled when you enter with exit apparel. Mayday, member down, they'll drag you. You won't get this from every Tom, Dick, and Harold, but here's a view from the top floor with Mickey Farrell.
What's up, guys? Welcome back. Another episode of A View from the Top Floor. Today's episode is my good friend, Lieutenant Steve Robertson from the Columbus, Ohio Fire Department. Now, Steve is a diehard engine company fireman. This guy lives and breathes the engine company. You may know him from FDIC. He's been a long-time figure in the FDIC circuit, stretching to success. He's doing the mid-rise hands-on now for this year. A lot of good things coming out of that program with him and a couple other guys. I'm incredibly honored to have him on today, and we talk angles. We're so quick to always not dismiss the engine, but kind of say it's a science where everyone's always talking about the truck and the art behind it and the beauty of the truck company. But Steve brings an element to the engine company like no other. He talks about different angles of how to hit door jams with the line, using the reach of the stream to ultimately change conditions on the fire ground almost instantly. We don't really understand how much water we can distribute if we understand the angles. So, Steve Robertson, Columbus, Ohio. Here we go. All right. Thanks, buddy. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it, Steve.
Absolutely, Mick. We've talked about it for a while, and finally getting a chance to sit down and discuss the things we've talked about 100 times, but just get to do it with everybody else.
No, it's fun actually when we do get together, which is a few times a year. We know we see each other at conferences and whatnot, but there's always a good conversation and dynamic between you and I as far as the engine company. And I think the engine company often gets dismissed, and you're doing so many great things for the fire service, bringing the understanding of the engine company. It's not necessarily like they call it like monkey work sometimes, right? Oh, a monkey can put out a fire, give him a line, right? Well, I think there's so much to engine work that goes in behind the scenes in the details, and everything we talk about comes down to details. And then that's exactly what you focus on, is the details of the engine company. Let's jump right into it, man. What do you got for me?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that, and I think, like you said, Mike and I, Champo and I, have been breaking each other's stones for 25 years about the engine and the truck, and it's fun. And I call them yard shepherds. He calls us water weasels. You know what I'm saying? Like, all that's great, but I think one is so dependent upon the other, and I think if you don't rely on each other and count on each other and have that trust between the engine and the truck, then the fire just doesn't go well. And I've always approached this as a system. And the older I get, the more experience I get, the more I realize I've done it not wrong, because it's what I knew to do and it's what I was taught to do. But I didn't focus on the details. And I'm finding that when we focus on the details and we have a true system, that we have a place to start. When things go sideways, it makes that, when I have a solid plan A and I have a good system, when I have to call the audible, when things aren't the way they appear, which happens a lot, that audible isn't nearly a huge change in tactics, that if we don't have a system to start from, it can be very, very taxing and very challenging. And I, years ago, we were down at one of Kurt's conferences, and I'm sitting up there, and Chris Martin from Elkhart and Jerry Herbst and those guys, and Ray McCormick was in the room, and Brian Brush. I can go down the list. It was all the heavy hitters, all the people I've looked up to in my career. And Chris would put these gigantic Post-it notes on the wall, and I just put 5 keys to a winning engine, and I wrote down these 5 things. It just hit me in the head, and I followed those, and it's worked really, really well as a base system. And I'll give it to you real quick. It's simple. Position the first engine correctly the first time. Like, that first engine dictates positioning, right? Everything goes based on the first engine's position. The second thing is, estimate the stretch, proper size and length of the first line. The third thing is the entry point. What point of entry are we making? You at the FDNY go vertical a hell of a lot more than we do, but yet the entry point in a dwelling is a very, very big deal. Path of least resistance to the fire, right? Stretch better than good. We are an engine company. Good is not good enough stretch and hand lines. We have to be better than good. That is our primary job. And the last thing, move and flow effectively. If we could do those 5 things and we can accomplish those 5 things well, you're going to win on most fires. You're going to win on most fires. And when we do that, the crazy thing about it is each one is dependent upon you doing the one before it correctly. If you don't get a good position, your stretch is going to go poorly. When the stretch goes poorly, maybe that doesn't give you the right entry point. Then what? Your move and flow goes wrong, or your positioning led to being short. Each one is dependent upon the other, but having a base system to start helps troubleshooting immensely.
Yeah, and good engines are able to fix problems on the fly. Like good engine firefighters, and like you said, there's a systematic method to everything we do, and company integrity is so incredibly important in the engine company. And I think that what's not being spoken about is that when you make a mistake in the engine, people die, firemen die. In the truck, we can kind of dance around our mistakes because we're operating by ourselves many times. I mean, I can't count how many times I've taken a mirror thinking it's a window, but you never tell anyone about that moment. It's a mistake that's made, and you kind of file it and move on. But in the engine, when there's a mistake made and that systematic method is broken, that's when it gets really bad. The dominoes begin to fall the wrong way, and by you having those statements or those almost rules set in place is so incredibly important.
Yeah, and when we talk about that, Mickey, you look at the system itself. Okay, and I've redefined it since the firefighter rescue survey came out. Brush and those guys did a phenomenal job. Look at it. My whole career, we've looked at nothing. My father's career looked at nothing but loss. We've never looked at our wins, and now these guys are starting to look at the wins, and we're redefining it. And I took some broad numbers from that. I'm going to throw them to you, and don't kill me on the intraweb when I get this off a little bit on the numbers, but I'm damn close when you look at an average. If you look at civilian grabs from time of arrival from 2 minutes to 6 minutes, it's for roughly 69% survival rate when we do that. 69%, that's pretty good. And my point is, I started thinking about this and I go, why are we basing everything on opinion? Why are we basing everything on ego? Yes, experience matters. Absolutely it matters. I'm not disregarding experience. But if you show me a way to stretch that's 30 seconds or 45 seconds faster than the way we've done it for 30 years, what are we arguing about? Are we scared to learn something new? Is my ego in the way of possibly saving somebody's life? Because I tell you, if that's your family in the hallway, you probably want that 45 seconds that's faster, even though it wasn't your idea. And I think us as instructors need to do a better job of that, of going, show me a better way. If you show me a better way, man, we're going to run with it. But you got to vet it too. You can't just be a fly-by-night thing. You got to vet these things in every situation possible. But I've started looking at things going, yeah, you can absolutely do it that way. Which way's faster? Could that be a secondary way to do this? Sure, absolutely. We need secondary ways to do everything. But when we start getting critical, and you talked about the detail stuff, I teach all the time, and I tell, we were in Hammond, Louisiana, at a great little conference there last week. And I said, does it seem like I'm being critical? And the one kid goes, yeah, it does. And I go, because I am. Because if that's your family, you want me to be critical. That's kind of how I look at it. And if you're not fixing it, you're endorsing it as a boss.
And I think
if you're not
practice
fixing the problem, yes, absolutely. But if you're not fixing the little things as a boss, you're endorsing it. And you can't do that. You just can't do that. Wherever that line in the sand is, that's the line. Because if you don't fix it, then the line just moved and you'll never get it back.
And from the officer standpoint, looking at it that way is, you're right, we do have to correct it. But from the firefighter standpoint, we have to together come up with what method works for us. Now, the bigger jobs, we have a set standard in how we stretch. But for the smaller jobs out there, every rig has got to be set up the same way. Because I've seen smaller departments with different stretches on different rigs, different hose packs, different hose loads, and no one's on the same page. And that's out. Everyone's got to be across the board. It's got to be a standard. standard is so important with the engine company. As much as I truly believe that engine work is an art. We always hear the old saying that truck work's an art, the engine's a science. I don't believe in that so much, especially after spending time with you and Ray and other engine guys. Anthony, there's so many tremendous engine instructors out there working hand in hand with different manufacturers, kind of making the engine cool again. Not that it ever wasn't cool, but everyone wants to be a truckie, right? Truckie. But when you really get down to the down and dirty, well, fair enough. But everybody in the sense where the truck work always seemed to be cool, like forcing doors, breaking windows, cutting roofs, doing all this fireman stuff. Not dismissing the engine, but talking about the engine as a science, that may turn some off when really it truly is an art form. And all you guys out there doing it on the circuit and people off the circuit that are just taking the understanding and making a standard behind what it is really making it a form of art. And I think that's what we have to focus on. As much as it is an art, there's a standard behind that art. But once you find the standard, you can get really, really in depth with the details of that standard. And that's exactly what you do with your class with the angles, which I absolutely love.
Yeah. And, just to dig into that for a second about hose loads and being standardized, when we went to the modified Minuteman bundle, we run a 100-foot bundle on our pre-connects. And we're an 1,800 person job in Columbus. It's not a small job. And we went to the 100-foot bundle. So when we looked at this, we vetted it. I went to the house captain. He goes, all right, what crazy shit do you got for me this week? Like, how that goes with me. I'm always putting something new on the rig, and he's always going, what are you doing? That's just what happens. But he looked at me and he goes, okay, let's show me what you got. And I did. And then he goes, all right, let me think on it. So we thought on it a couple of weeks. So what do you think, Cap? He goes, show me again. Teach my guys and let's see how they do with it. And then we'll talk about it. Taught them exactly what I wanted to do. Within 2 or 3 stretches, these guys are putting 200 feet of hose on the ground, about 18 seconds calling for water in line with the door. And he looked at me and goes, okay, so what about, we got a fence. Now what? I showed him that stretch. Well, what about going vertical? Showed him a coupling drop with the bundle. You know what I mean? Like, if you decide to do a hose load, it's got to be versatile. You can't have 6 different hose loads for 6 situations. Like, I know folks, we were down in Louisiana. I was talking to some of those guys, great group of guys. They're like, well, we use this for this pre-connect. We use this load for this pre-connect. And then we got a Gustom pack over here for this situation. Then we got a high-rise pack that's in a different load. And I said, how many fires do you go to a year? Well, I don't know, 10 maybe. And I said, okay. In 10 fires, how many times do you pull all of those? Well, never. My point. When you build your system, look at a system that you can adapt to the situation without adapting tactically or a different load. And that's why we did it. We go vertical with it. We do well hole stretches with it. I took you guys are the best in the world at well hole stretching. The FDNY is the best in the world, in my opinion, at well. I was blessed to learn from Ray McCormick, Chief Bob Morris, Tim Collette, good Lord, Jim Smith from Squad 41 just retired. I was blessed to learn from what I feel is some of the best guys in the world at this. And then I took what they taught me, though, and I adapted it to my situation because I don't have FDNY staffing. We don't run bulk beds. So when we get these lessons, the work has just started because now we have to do what? Now we have to adapt it to our staffing, to our demographics, to our buildings, to everything else. So just because you found what you think is the latest and greatest thing doesn't mean that your work's done. Now your work begins and you have to figure out how to adapt it, number one, and how to implement it, number two.
So what is that hose load you were talking about, the pack that you just mentioned that Columbus uses?
Yeah, it's a 100-foot bundle. It's 100-foot, 1.75 inch. My guys throw two Velcro straps on it, and they like the Velcro straps if we're going over a fence, if we're going vertical. 100-foot of hose is not hard to shoulder. It's easy. But if you start going vertical 3, 4, 5 floors with it, what do you think tends to happen on your shoulder? It starts to kind of go crazy with you. If we need to extend a bundle, I put 100-foot of hose on my shoulder with a couple straps. It's not a big deal. And everybody's like, the straps cost us time, they're a pain, da, 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 da. Well, they're only a pain because you're probably putting them on incorrectly. They don't stay on. Well, you're probably not strapping it correctly. The more time you take to make your bundle, the better it's going to perform for you. You know, we started in the conference last week, and the first time they ever did this, we did it, we showed them, we did it, we walked through it once. The second time they had ever put this hose on the landing in a well hole, they put 100 foot of hose on the fire floor in 1 minute and 2 seconds on the 3rd floor. The first full speed run these guys had ever done down in Hammond, Louisiana was 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 seconds. Calling for water, having water in the pipe on the 3rd floor. And they're all looking at me like, what kind of voodoo was that? Well, we took what Ray and you guys have done for years with your high rise. Your midpoints. Your midpoints have been marked forever, right? The FDNY on high-rise lines.
Yeah.
So we took that same application and we took it down to 1 3/4 inches. So all the midpoints are marked. So now if I've got to split a load in a fence, if I've got to split load between houses for a basement job because the houses are so close, if I've got to split the load on a balcony on an apartment, hotel, motel, those midpoints are marked. Now, when I make those moves, my nozzle and coupling are never leaving the door. That saves me what? Time. All the little things. So just because you learned an application doesn't mean it stops there. We can take that application now, make it your own, tweak it to what works for you. I can tell you right now, every hose load on my engine company is a 100-foot bundle. 200-foot 1 3/4 pre-connect 100-foot bundle, 2 straps, midpoint sparked on every piece of hose. 250 1 3/4 off the rears. Everything's off the rear for me. Same thing. 2-inch line, 200 feet pre-connected, 100-foot bundle. Ram, 100-foot pre-connected with a 2.5 bundle right underneath it. So when I do that and I use the exact same load, high rise, same thing. When I use the same load for everything, how proficient do you think my guys are at stretching lines?
Yeah, you're dialed in. That's the whole thing. You got to be dialed in. Now you could do this either way with the pre-connect or not a pre-connect or a dead bed, right? Yeah. So it's just that initial 100 feet.
Your initial working length is what is bundle. And I'm telling you, so you look at the mid-rise stuff now. We got 400-foot hallways all over the place. We're burning these mid-rises down simply because guys are hitting the standpipe and stretching short. And then by the time the reflex time of them going down, they're not running on the front porch to go get a hook in the rig. They've got to go down 4 or 5 stories, 3 stories, whatever it is, to the rig to get more hose to come back up, only to ask them to extend off the pipe in a dirty hallway. Mick, you've done that before, haven't you?
Yeah,
extended the line.
Yeah, we've done that.
Though, for somebody that hasn't done that a lot.
It's almost impossible if you're not proficient, because once you add a little bit of stress, well, then it's game over. So that's something you have to drill on with the stress element, and that's really hard to recreate, that actual stress of loss of water on the fireground, or lack of water, I should say. So as far as that, though, are you stretching off the rig in that situation and avoiding the standpipe altogether? Yeah,
absolutely. If it's 6 stories or below, I prefer to go off the rig. I know that system's going to work. You know what I mean? I know, because now you're getting into 13R systems, and you have standpipes that are on domestic water, and gosh only knows what else, because, PEX piping with the sprinkler systems and half the flow with the sprinkler system. So it's an absolute train wreck that's going to be a nightmare for the United States Fire Service for a lot of years to come. We just started the new program, myself and Clyde Gordon and Todd Edwards. And we got the new mid-rise mayhem class. And it's really catching on because everybody's got these things and nobody knows what to do with them.
Yeah, even in my job, I mean, it's not really something we deal with often, but I do see, even my old response area, I saw they tore down a block of private dwellings and they put these mid-rise buildings in, and there was a huge learning curve for all the companies, kind of like, what are we doing? How are we treating this? How are we stretching? Who's going through the roof? And it was something that we all had to come together and actually have a jolt and get on the same page of our positioning, because it is a curveball. But I really like the idea, and I see smaller departments not really falling in line because they don't understand that we need to be stretching off the rig if we can. And they want to put in everyone wants to use these high-rise packs that they get and they practice. They want to use the standpipe. It's really hard unless you're extremely proficient to make a standpipe operation go smooth. And that's something you have to be drilling on almost daily to make it go smooth. So if what you do is stretch off the rig at most fires, then stretch off the rig if you can. I think that's something that is important to understand.
But what's that go back to? What's the first thing I talked about? What's my first rule? Positioning the first apparatus.
Yeah.
If I position that at the lobby instead of at where the well exits on the fire side, on the attack stairwell side, guess what? I just took that option completely out of the book. Just by bad positioning, now tactically the entire fire's changed because I didn't slow down recon the fire. Where does the well hole end? Well, if I can put my rig within 50 feet of that, you know what I'm saying? It's a doable thing, very doable thing that we don't look at. We always have to go to the front door. Well, if I got fire blown out of 4 and it's 3 or 4 apartments from the end of the building, where am I going? Right? I'm going to go to that side, to that well hole, and that's where I'm going to work. And I think that's the experience of slowing down. Just a half a step, right? Got to slow it down a little bit. I call it the speed of the game. And if you look at the speed of the game, what do I mean by that? You remember your first fire, don't you, Big?
Yeah.
Okay. What color was the house? And you know what? When I asked that question, you know what they say? It was fire, right? That's all you saw. That's all I saw. The second fire, you come out, you go, hey, boss, the house was blue. And I go, very good, Mickey. The house was blue. Great. Glad you picked up on that. Was there a dormer vent or dormer window? Son of a bitch, right? I'm just challenging that young firefighter to slow it down a little bit. And I use a football analogy. Who was the last Heisman Trophy winner to go to the NFL and win the MVP award the first year? It just doesn't happen. Second year, yeah, they're good. Third year, all of a sudden, man, they're the best thing since sliced bread. And the media asks these guys all the same question, what changed? And every one of these guys gives the exact same answer. The game slowed down for me. I'm seeing the field better, and I'm making better decisions. Our job is exactly the same. When we can slow the game down, you're going to see that field, you're going to see that building, and you're going to pick up on things on that building that are going to help you tactically forever. And I can't make you flip the switch, but I can challenge you every fire to try to do more and see more to help you make better decisions.
Yeah, and I call that visual intelligence. And our eye is actually, the retina is part of the brain, and people don't realize that. So when it comes to like the size up, slowing down and letting your eye process the information to the brain, because it is all connected, and people see things differently. So you having 30 years on the job versus a guy that has 3 years on the job, you may look at the same building at the same tempo, but see it just a little bit differently because we interpret things differently. And that's why I think it's important to challenge the younger firefighters to develop that muscle, that connection to the brain, that link that the retina is actually a part of your brain and you're processing information. But you have to be able to slow down to make that happen. Exactly what you just said. I call it the flow state formula, and that every fire has a rhythm, a tempo, and a cadence. The engine company is more of a cadence. The truck company has a more of a dance or a flow, if you will. And together you find that rhythm. That's important. And with the running on the fire ground, and I don't want to get into that whole thing, but do you run on the fire ground? Well, situations dictate different things, and just don't run the tempo of that fire, because every fire has a different tempo. If I turn the corner and people are hanging out the windows, I hear a mayday given, I'm going to run into position, obviously. But you have to be able to slow down and dial into the tempo of a certain fire, because every fire is laid out in a different rhythm, a different cadence, and a different flow state, if you will. But exactly what you said is, in the engine, we have to slow down our stretch as well.
Yeah, and what you just said absolutely leads into what I'm talking about with angles. Because when you get into the splitting of the door, you get into the things that set up the push of the stretch, then to me, that's where, when you are running, where's your head?
Down,
you're not looking
down.
up.
Yeah,
because if you're running with your head up, you're not going to run very long. You're going to be on your face. When your head's down, you're not reading this building. You're slinging hose. Look, you can move with a purpose. I'm all about moving with a purpose. But you have to have your head up, reading the location of the fire in relationship to the entry point. Because I'll guarantee you, if you do the angles correctly when you position the first line, whatever time you saved running that you didn't take a good angle dumping hose and slinging hose, I'll guarantee you I'm going to be faster because my push is going to go a hell of a lot quicker, and we're not coming out to get hose. We're stretching in line with the doors, and we're taking good angles to the fire because I moved with a purpose, but I placed my line and stretched my line in a particular manner to set up the push and make it easier to get to the seat of the fire. I'm not saying don't run on the fire ground. I'm like you said, I'm sure there's a time. When you're stretching the first line, to me, whatever time you say running, you're going to be better off with that time on making it up on the push because you're not coming out to get hose. It's a straight shot.
100% agree. The devil is always in the details. Everything you do, engine the truck, it's the details. So do you want to jump into one of these videos? We have the Brass Tacks Hard Facts video. You want to jump into that and kind of explain what we're talking about here?
Yeah, and I think what, where we're going with this is, like I said, when you go back to those 5 things, we set the engine up. I'm a big proponent of pull past the fire. You see 3 sides that we're setting up. We're leaving the front for the truck. All of those positive things that happen when we do that. When we do that, we're looking at the door, right? We're looking at whether we want to inside or outside of the door, the split of the door, which angle are we taking to the fire? After we get into the angles, then what do we need to do, right? We need to look at that and say, okay, interiorly, how can we best get water on the fire? When we look at all the outside hit stuff, and we have all the stuff from the outside hits from Fire Research Safety Institute and all the great work they've done, you look at those things and you go, okay, well, I got to put water from the outside because the faster we put water on the fire, the better it gets. Well, I challenge you that isn't necessarily always correct. Because when we take good angles on the interior, which we usually don't think about, we're usually a bull in a china shop. We've got water, we're going to flow water, we're going to go to the scene of the fire and put it out. What I'm a proponent of is when we do that, look at the angle of the fire, because if I use the reach of my stream, I'm putting water in the compartment a hell of a lot sooner than 3 or 4 feet from the door, just simply by taking angle. So probably the Brass Tacks video is a good place to start. And then I like using it. And if anybody's not familiar with Brass Tacks Hard Facts, it's on the Brass Tacks or Hard Facts Calculator is what it's called. It's also on Elkhart Brass's website. It's like 103 videos from engine guys all over the country, vetted guys. You got Ray and Dave McGrail and Brian Brush and Kurt Isaacson, and just go right down the line of good dudes who are vetted engine guys. And Eric Tolan from Denver. It's just a great group of guys. And they're just 3 to 5 minute nuggets. And if you're a young engine guy, jump on there and watch 5 a day. They're 3 to 5 minutes long, and they're life lessons from people that made a lot of mistakes over the years to learn them. I think it's really good stuff. But the Brian Kerr, I got to throw a shout out to him because he's the guy that does all the animations and the producer of the thing, and did a phenomenal job with my vision of what I wanted to show. But he put it into animation. And watching the video is a hell of a lot easier than me trying to explain it. So if you want to fire it up, that'd be great.
Yeah, we'll jump right into it.
I'm Steve Robertson. We're getting down to the brass tacks and hard facts of interior stream angles. Taking good angles inside a fire is imperative to a positive and successful fire attack. Couple things I like to do as the boss. The first thing, I'll take the thermal imaging camera, throw it over the nozzle's person's shoulder, give them a quick 5-second look. It's not going to give them a complete layout of where we're going, but it's going to give them a nice place to start. The second thing, where do we place ourselves in a hallway? In this case, this being the fireside, the fire room down on the right, we're going to do it the wrong way first. We're going to show you that good angles matter. In this case, Derek's going to start making the push down the hallway, hanging to the fire side. Notice how long it takes him to get good water into the compartment, hitting the jam first, and then pushing all the way in. Go ahead, Derek. He's making a good push. Everything's good. Finally starting to get good water into the compartment right there. Good nozzle technique making the push. Now we're going to talk about the non-fire side, the correct way to do this. Notice how Derek has moved roughly 3 feet to the non-fire side of the hull. By doing that, he's going to get water in the compartment a lot faster. Modern studies have shown the faster we can get water in the compartment, moving and flowing, and in training good air from the bottom, increases survivability. Using the reach of our stream and taking good angles is imperative to a successful fire attack. All right, Derek, go ahead and start flowing. Notice he's pulling the hallway, and now he's gained access already to the door jamb. By gaining access to the door jamb and continuing to flow, we're in training good air. By moving and flowing and putting as much water in the compartment as we can, by the time he gets there, the majority of the fire has already been knocked down. The takeaway of this is slow down, the speed of the game. We've got to slow the speed of the game down to take a second and choose the correct side of the hallway. When we choose the correct side of the hallway, it directly impacts how soon we get water into the compartment and the possible survivability of victims.
Yeah, so I think what that shows is I think we've all had that fire on a dwelling, second story job. You're at the top of the stairs, right? And you just grab the nozzle when you start flowing water, you're heading down there, everything's great. If you take a second and you see fire blowing out the alpha side, if you're a boss, if you could just get your nozzle to the Charlie side, throw the camera right over their shoulder. See that door jamb, see the fire, yeah, hit it. Work the jamb up and down, work it up and down, work it up and down. Do you hear that sound? It is a very distinct sound when you're in the jam compared to a wall. And I think that's something we're not doing a great job of teaching our young nozzlemen. You can't see. Stop trying to. Listen. Use your other senses to your advantage. When you are on a wall and you're throwing water and it's hitting that wall, does that make a very distinct sound, Mick?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. So as soon as you get and you move that over to an opening, what happens? It sounds what? Distance.
You don't hear it. It goes away. Yeah.
Right. And then you come to the other side of the door. Where are you at? You're right back. So you know that's the sweet spot. This is the same thing. When you're on the wall, it's distinct, and then you hit that jam, it's going to sound different. So by throwing that camera over their shoulder for just a second, starting to paint that jam, we're already winning right there. The next couple of videos are going to show you how much water we can get into these damn rooms from a long way away. And when we're doing that, we're in training good air. We're getting gas contraction. We're getting all the things that directly lead to survivability. The point I'm making with all of the angle stuff is, A, you're not taking nearly the beating that you take by crawling up on the fire, right? That was cool and fun back in the day. I don't enjoy it nearly like I used to, get beat up. I enjoy going to fires and I enjoy putting them out, but I like doing it a little smarter than I used to. The second thing with this, though, is the survivability aspect to this. And we have a complete flow, but the window's vented and we're moving. When you watch, you move in that line up and down, and you see this fire going away, and you see the push, and you see the lift you're getting, you're realizing that the gas contraction is huge, number one. And number two is we're increasing survivability in spaces all through the second floor, not just the fire room, not just the hallway. That contraction's happening in every room, and we're getting lift in every room. And that's a bigger deal than I ever thought it was. The deeper I dug into those studies years ago, the more I realized, wow, application is a big deal. And how we apply it, and from the angles we apply it, is even a bigger deal. When you look at engine company and how we relate to survivability, it's water application and time of water application. That are the two things that's going to support the engine company saving lives in fires. That's going to allow the truck to get the metals and do the things they do. If we apply water correctly and we do it in a timely manner, that's what leads to survivability, because it gives the truck guys an opportunity to really win.
Well, I always say that, good trucks in this job come from incredible engines, and that's the bottom line. If you don't have a hardcore backbone of an engine company, the truck's not going to be able to do their job, and that's the bottom line behind it. Going back to that hallway they were crawling down, was there a time where you were taught to go against the wall of the fire room, not off, how the original video had him coming down. That's how they used to teach that at one
Absolutely.
point, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were taught, okay, it's 3 doors down on the right, hang to the right hallway, count 3 doors.
Yeah.
Right? That's what we did. Well, we didn't flow water back then either. You might have a squirt or two that way, but you weren't putting water just into smoke. We didn't do that. You get beat up if you did that. It wasn't good. It was just not something we knew to do. And were we wrong? Oh, we didn't know. Like I tell guys all the time, especially older guys, they get upset. Well, are you saying we've been doing it wrong? No, I'm saying you've been doing it the way you've been taught. I just want you to open your mind that we're still learning.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to clarify.
Learn.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that because I know a lot of people were probably listening to this or watching thinking, wait a minute, I just went to fire 1 2 months ago and they told me to hang on the side of the fire. Yeah. And now this guy's telling me to go off to the other wall of the hallway, and it makes total sense because of the angle. Again, the details. So do you want to jump into the prop? Or do you want to
the prop's a good video. Let's start there. This is just something we did playing with it. And the prop, it's simply probably 15, 20 feet, maybe 15 feet probably to the door jamb. And it's a 10-foot room. So the jamb is 10 feet from the window. And what I want you to see, this is just 1 3/4 with a 7/8. Look at the amount of water that we're getting out the window from 15, 20 feet away. You stay in that jam as you're moving and flowing. I've always used the analogy, we're a 160-gallon-a-minute bulldozer. Are bulldozers fast? No. But what stops them from going forward? When we move at a gentleman's pace down that hallway, painting that jam the whole way, what do you think's going to happen by the time we get there? It's out. That's a pretty large amount of water that's going into that room. And there cannot be nothing but good effects. I mean, we've done it for a while now at my company, and it works. Now, scientifically, can I tell you how it works yet? No. But I can tell you I was fortunate enough to be chosen for the technical panel for mid-rise and row homes for FRSI, their next study. We just met about 3 weeks ago for our initial meeting, and I brought it up to the group to do this study as part of the study of how hallway angles and reach of the stream and painting the jam can impact the fire and actually get scientific data behind what we're saying. We know it works. We've done it. But to have the scientific data behind it, how much of a difference are we truly making by doing that? And I think everybody seemed very interested in it. Of course, they've not come out with what final studies we're going to do yet. I'm excited to hear exactly what we're going to do. Got some great people on that panel, but everybody seemed on board with it. So let's hope we can get some scientific data behind what we do and why we're doing it. It's more of the why. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and what's good is that it's scientific data, right? Everyone loves data these days. It's scientific data putting firefighters in the fire building, not taking firefighters out of the fire building. And that's where a lot of the data seems to be trending, getting guys out, more safety side of the job. When in reality, we still have to go in and put the fire out. Well, let's get some data behind why we have to go inside. And that's what you guys are doing. And that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah, and, they've really brought on a great group, and I don't mean to caveat too much, but just real quick, they brought on a great group. There's truck guys on there that are going to take what we're talking about, applying the interior study, the coordinated attack study, and the search study into mid-rises and row homes, basically, and then tactically applying that to time-to-task stuff that we never really – they did a little bit of it. They did a lot of it in the search study. But it's the first time on the engine side we've looked at time to task. How long does it take to stretch from the first floor to the fourth floor? What's that reflex time? Well, that's the stuff we're going to vet and include that into the study. That if it's a minute and a half or 2 minutes or whatever the average is when we throw this out there, when we learn the time to task stuff, that's what they're going to wait before they start their fire attack. That way it makes it as realistic as we can make it and still keep everybody safe. But the time to task stuff is a big deal. And I think that's something that when they add that realism to the experiments, it's really going to benefit the fire service.
Just looking at some of those videos, I'm thinking of one fire I had about a year ago. I was the engine company officer. If we used the angles, it would have been a game changer for the beating we took in that fire, because we had fire down a long hallway, multiple rooms, and we had to crawl up onto the fire to make the turn. And we had to do that for each and every room, probably 4 rooms on fire. If we just used the reach of the stream and hit that angle, it would have been a game changer for the truck that was searching past that fire. I know that for a fact. It would have changed the game. And it would have been less hairy of a situation, because ultimately, in the end, everything was fine. But there were some moments of that fire where if we used that tactic, I know for a fact it would have changed.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Don't you think I would have wished I'd have known this 30 years ago?
Yeah.
Right? Like you just say, okay, this works. Let's start working toward putting that into our system. But again, and here's the thing, don't take my word for any of this. Bet it. You got to go try it. Most of the folks, we've never crawled down hallways together, right? So you don't know me. We've never been on a fire together. Don't take my word for any of it. Go out there and do it yourself and vet it, and then make your own opinion.
And, I think a lot of academies, they don't have the ability to burn pallets and hay or whatnot. They have the propane fires. It really gives you no practical experience of firefighting whatsoever. But this is an example where you can take that building and make it beneficial for you and your company, because you can practice the angles and you can just look at how the water distributes into different rooms, different angles, and understand there is an art form behind all of it. It's not just like you said, a bowl in a china shop.
And do we get it right every time, Mick? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We're walking back through as the engine company after the truck's done doing what they do. And I go, what do you think, guys? Where were we? We were here. Where could we have been? Boss, I should have slid over here. I could have cut it off right here. We wouldn't have taken it. Absolutely. That's all I want to hear. Good job. I don't have to say it anymore, because the guys are on board with what we're trying to do. So what happens when we go through those critiques? It's a very simple critique. We identify it. Where can we be better? We train on it. We move the fuck on. Don't dwell on this stuff. We're human. I've never been on a perfect fire. Have you?
Oh, no, ever, never.
No, and it doesn't happen. So stop thinking it's going to. Be humble enough to yourself and the job and the company to do what? Admit your mistakes, train on them, and move on. We're human beings. I make a mistake on every single fire. Every fire we make mistakes.
This job is built on humility. That's it. If you can admit humility, you'll have a successful career, because the job is built solely on the understanding of humility. And when you have humility, you understand what you've done wrong. You correct it. The next fire, you don't make that mistake. And after a consecutive group of fires, you're doing pretty well. You're still making mistakes, but you're not remaking the same mistakes because you identified mistakes.
And it's not that you make mistakes, it's how you recover. How do you recover from that mistakes in the heat of the game? That's it. You can't go, I screwed that stretch up. No, you got to unscrew it right now. We'll talk about what happened getting to that point, but we don't get a do-over button, right? We don't get a do-over button. So put it to the side, fix the problem, continue to move forward. That's it. Don't overthink it.
I had Mike Smith on the show. He's fireman in the Bronx, 48 engine. He's passionate about engine work just as you. He said a good firefighter in the engine company, it's a problem solver. And that'll make you a good engine company firefighter, being a problem solver. And I love that. And there's so much truth to that.
I'm going to elaborate on that, because I want you to think about something. When's the last water leak you went on, you didn't fix their problem? The last elevator run, you didn't fix their problem, right? Smells and bells, you didn't fix their problem. We are problem solvers for everybody else. Every run we go to, when's the last fire you left burning? You don't do that, right? EMS run that you didn't have EMS come in and take care of it after you fixed the problem for them until they got there. Where I'm going with this, we could go through this and say, can you think of the last 2 fires you were on that the same mistake was made twice? Exact same mistake on both fires. And I bet most people can, because why? We're not humble enough to ourselves and the job to fix our own damn mistakes.
Yeah.
We were scared to put it out there in front of our peers that we made a mistake. Really? Because I don't get that. I started going first in critiques.
Yeah.
Senior boss in the battalion. I've been a boss, 22, 23 years now. I go first at every critique. It doesn't matter when we show up. We go first. And there's a purpose behind that. If there's younger bosses in the battalion, guess what they do? They're put at ease when they hear the senior boss start throwing himself under the bus, going, I screwed that up, guys. I should have done this. Here's what I didn't see. I need to do a better job at this. Could have done this. All of a sudden, the weight of the world is off those young bosses' shoulders, and they go, it's okay to make a mistake. And that's the only way you're going to get better. That's the only way you're going to get better is if you're humble enough to yourself and the job and the people we serve to admit your mistakes and grow from it. You're never going to grow if you don't.
And then a company level, if you were humble enough and brave enough to say, you know what, I did this at the fire, I should have done that. Well, that guy listening to you admitting that mistake, you're like, you know what, I just learned something. Next fire I go to, I'm not going to make that same mistake. We have to be able to share the mistakes, though, and that's the biggest part of this whole thing is when you own the humility of the moment, that micro mistake that can eventually become a macro mistake. If you own it in the moment, a lot of times, and say, you know, I did this, I should have done that. Ultimately, your company and your job will progress light years ahead of others that aren't admitting their mistakes.
You see my Stretching for Success program, Mick, right?
Yeah,
and
we just down there in Louisiana.
That's 30 some years of my mistakes and the solutions that we came up with. These are my mistakes. I own them, but I'm sharing those so these guys don't make the same ones.
Or if they make it, you say, you know what? Steve made that mistake. I should have remembered that, but you know what? It's okay that I made it because he made it, and that guy's squared away.
Well, you know what I'm saying. Like, just it's okay. Now, don't be a shitbag that makes the same mistake every fire, because now you and I are going to have a problem because either you're not learning or I'm not teaching, and we got to figure that out right quick. When you make the same mistake over and over, either I'm not teaching as a boss or you're not learning, and we're going to figure that out right quick because that's going to kill a company. That's a cancer. That person is a cancer in the company, and you can't have it. But
a lot of time, those guys making the same mistakes are the guys that you can't break through to them and say, you know what, try this next time. I know. No, try this. No, I know. And then you get there, and he doesn't know. That happens far too often. I shouldn't say it happens far too often, but those guys are in companies, and they need to be pulled aside and addressed because, like you said, that's bad for a company, but it's also dangerous for the fireground.
And some people, my guys don't mind it. There's some people that get their feelings hurt by me on a fire, and it's not going to end the day for me. But I look right at them and I go, well, if you knew, we wouldn't be fucking talking about it, would we? If you knew, you and I would not be having this conversation. So the best thing you can do is close your mouth and listen. Because right now is not the time to talk to me because you just told me you knew and you couldn't perform the task. Because my job is to ensure what? That you can do your job. That's what I get paid to do. And you're not doing your job. So guess what? I'm failing. I don't like to lose and I don't like to fail. You put me in this situation. I didn't do this. So don't get mad at me for doing my job. If you don't like that and you want to bid out, there's 35 other engines on 3 units. Or you can be part of this group and we'll bring you up. I'm not saying you got to be a rock star coming in 18. I'm not saying that. But if you're not willing to come up to our level and work to get there, it's probably not going to work out.
I mean, that's the beauty of larger jobs like mine and yourself is that I always say good guys gravitate great places, the shit bags gravitate to shit places, but having the understanding or the ability to have a standard in different companies allows people to go to different places. You know what I mean? So
and I've had some really good firefighters that just didn't work out at 18, and it was personality based. They're good firemen, damn good firemen. It just personality wise didn't work out. And you have that conversation. Am I mad at them? No. Is it personal? No. But where you're going to get into trouble is when you start treating people differently. I don't care whether you're black, white, blue, green, brown, yellow, male, female. I don't care. This is the standard at 18. You're either here or above it. When you're down here, we're going to get you to here. If you're not willing to do this to get there, guess what? It's not going to work out. It's not going to work out. And if everybody gets treated the same, you're not doing anything wrong. You're doing your job.
Standard has been set, and it's for you to fill in the gaps and work to that standard or find a new place to work. And that's the truth of it. I mean, there's plenty of places to go where that standard's a bit lower if you're not willing to come up to the standard set by guys like yourself. That's the thing. We have to remember that this is war. When we go out the door, it's war. It's not personal. We are going to war. In the firehouse, there's ball breaking. That's fun and good-hearted. When we go out the door, it's all business. And that's what we have to remember, is that when we go out the door, it is all business. Nothing is personal. We have the one video from the hot training. You want to throw that on? Or
Alabama, yeah, that's a great one.
Okay.
This is in a 5-story hotel. We had it for a week. Todd Edwards set it up. It was down in Alabama. And we had this 5-story building for 5 days, maybe 6 days. It was a bunch. And we had a 2-inch line, Mick, and we were doing jam hits with it. So I got in there, and I want you to see this jam hit. I had to run. Literally, I am out on the balcony with the sliding glass window. And you can see the amount of water that's going into this room. This is about 25 feet away, maybe 20, 25 feet away when we started hitting that jam from the correct side, opposite of the fire side.
Okay, here we go.
That's a boatload of water. So that was a 2-inch line with an 1 1/16 tip. So 240 gallons a minute, 50 PSI, right about 87 pounds nozzle reaction. It's a great line for what I think is, I consider it big water. That's an interior line. I'm not a big 2.5 guy inside structures, just based on maneuverability and nozzle reaction. I think your interior lines have to be maneuverable. Not everybody can throw 2 companies at a 2.5. So to me, the 2 inch is a nice mix. We're losing a bunch of water weight, but yet we're getting 240 gallons a minute. That's a pretty big deal. And we're losing 11 pounds nozzle reaction too. So I think you're going to leave the nozzle open longer on that 2-inch line as well.
I love what you just said, though, how you're not a big 2.5 guy. What Ray and Timmy did for my job completely changed the game. It made the ability for good engine officers to become great engine officers because they can make decisions. It's a decision-based tactic now where you can choose what size line you're going to stretch, because for so long it was hard written rule that anything in a commercial is 2.5. I can't tell you how many times I've been standing in a bodega with the potato chip bag on fire with the 2.5, and you know, you feel embarrassed almost to the point. So they've made that change, which really changes the game for our job.
Well, it's funny you say that, because it's, you know, to the chief officers out there, and I've had this discussion with a lot of them. Chief Salk and I had this talk, and I said, you know, it's pretty easy from the buggy to say, hey, kid, grab that 2.5-inch line with 2 people and take it in that Family Dollar store on a wet tile floor and go put that fire out. Really? I don't know if you've accomplished that, but you take a pretty damn fast ride on that wet tile floor with 2 people on a 2.5, right? The other side of that is I believe there's absolutely a place for a 2.5. I'm not saying there's not a place for 2.5. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, my opinion and my experience, if I'm going interior with the line and I need big water inside, it's going to be a 2-inch line. It's maneuverable. It's still big water. And I personally have not been in a fire, and I said in a fire, that I needed 265 gallons a minute that 240 didn't put out. And I'm leaving the nozzle open longer. And I think that's the key. It's maneuverable, and I'm leaving the nozzle open longer. It doesn't do us any good to drag a 2.5 and half throttle it. Does no good. You're half throttling it, so you're getting 1 3/4 water, dragging around 2.5-inch water weight. Doesn't make much sense to me.
And if you got to make a push to the basement, getting that line, making that turn, and going down the run of stairs, if it's a front run of stairs, it's impossible.
It's a whole nother animal, right? And I just, you know, I'm not saying, for me, I use 2.5 as an exterior line. It's an exterior line. We run it on our Rams. I'll take that Ram into a warehouse. We'll have that big water if we need it. If I don't need it, I spin the tip. I take the same bundle we talked about at the beginning, and what do? We hook it to spin the tip off the Ram. We hook it to the Ram and extend off the Ram. It's endless what you can do when you use the same load and you keep applying it to different situations. When we apply it to different situations, that's when the rubber meets the road and you really start growing as a company. Because just because we ran into a situation where you didn't have an answer for the hose load to work, that's just a challenge. You can look back and look at training minutes on fire engineering. We came up with a method at 18 to split cars. I got cars very urban, both sides of the street, right? How do I get 100-foot working length on the other side of the cars? We drilled and drilled and drilled and drilled, and we found a method to do that. Now, if I have 100-foot working length on the working side of those parked cars, most of the time, that's a pretty damn good start for me. I can hit the majority of the house, majority of that dwelling with that 100 feet.
So you're saying you're going to stretch over the car?
No, I'm stretching between them, but we're not catching any tires.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Okay, 10-4. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're putting 100-foot working link with that 100-foot shoulder load on the working side of those cars.
Oh, okay, got you. That makes total sense.
I'm not loose. I'm not putting down I'm not going to the rig for a half tire rim or any of that crap. I'm not saying it doesn't work, because it does. But what's it cost me? Time.
Yeah.
And I don't have to leave somebody sitting there at that corner working that corner when I split the cars correctly. I'm not losing a body.
Time is what you just said was time. It costs time. I truly feel that time is a tool in the fireground, and we learn to manage it or manipulate it. It's a benefit always for us if we can understand to control it. And because time ultimately is the only tool that we can somewhat fluctuate. We're always behind the 8 ball, but if we could make up a little bit of time, it's always for a win, not so much a loss, like you just said. Dropping back and like losing that guy to get that coupling maybe stuck in a tire, that's time lost.
You can't make it up.
No.
So let's look at this, Mick. What do we control on the fire ground? Do we control where we park the first engine most of the time? Yes, right? Do we control how well we stretch the first line? Yes. Do we control how fast you can put your face piece, hood, helmet, gloves on? Yes. Do we control whether we can force a door or not in a timely manner? Yes. As soon as we do that and we cross that threshold, though, what did we just lose? You lost control. You have no idea what's on the other side of that door. Could it be a hoarder house? You don't control that, right? We don't control what's on the other side of that door. My point being is this. We have to be better than good. We have to be damn good at the things we control if we're going to be successful on the fire ground and we're going to save lives. We have to be better than good. Good's not good enough. The things we control, we have to absolutely excel, because you only get one shot at it.
And to build off that is, I feel that when we accept the fact that we don't have control beyond that threshold, you have to accept that. Then you ultimately gain complete control of the situation once you cross the threshold, because you've accepted it.
Yep.
Guys try to fight that, and they say, they want to control the fire building. You have no control. You can only control the moments leading up to that threshold.
You adapt to the fire building.
Exactly. There's something I wanted to ask you, talk a little bit about, because you came on the job before the thermal imaging camera was a part of the engine company, right? How has that changed what you do as an engine officer, and how has that affected the nozzleman's performance?
Wow, great question. And I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be completely honest here. I wish I would use it more. I rely. If I don't have it hooked to my air pack, if I don't hook it up on my pack in the morning, I end up forgetting the damn thing. And I know some people are tied to it. Some people are married to it. I'm just not that person, because that's not how I was taught. I have really, really, really tried personally to take it every fire and use it. I like to just grab that tick and throw it over the nozzleman's shoulder and give them a 5-second look. Give them a quick 5-second look. That's not going to give them a complete layout. Hey, down on the right, see it? Yeah. Get to the left, start making a hit. It's not going to give them a perfect layout, but it's going to get us going in the right direction, right? But at the same time, I think it's important that we teach firefighters, especially young firefighters, how to find the fire without the tick.
Oh, yeah.
We still need the basics of, it happened to me years ago. We had an old captain, and I'll tell the story. I've told it before on podcasts, but I think it's important. An old captain named Jerry Ruby, just a tough old bird. This guy was just not mean, but damn it, he was intimidating, right? And you didn't screw with Ruby. You just knew it. You didn't screw with him. He was just a bad dude. And one of the most respected guys on the job. Had a fire, first floor job over on Newberry. I'm on the back step, engine 2. Get there, stretch, going in. putting it's getting hotter and blacker, hotter and blacker, hotter and blacker. This was early 90s. And he taps me on the ass. He says, kid, we going to put this thing out. And I said, Cap, I can't find the fire. He thought it was funny. Started giggling a little bit. I can tell you I didn't think it was nearly as funny as he did because it was getting pretty snotty in there. And I'm like, yeah, this is not good. And he said, put your face on the floor. And my second mistake, I said, what? So he put my face on the floor. After that, he goes, put your light to your mask. And I did. He goes, which way is the smoke moving? I said, to my right. He said, turn to your right. I turned to my right, and the fire was right beside me. Okay. We're out on the tailboard after it's going on. We're on a bumper waiting, truck shoveling stuff. And I said, Cap, how did you know that? And he said, an old guy taught me when I got on. So in the early 70s, Ruby was taught this by an old guy. And he taught it to me. But you know what I think's ironic as hell, Mick? It's not in a book.
Yeah.
This is not in a book. Our books are the worst they've ever been as far as training young firefighters. I don't know of another profession that says we're going to put you through all this school of Fire 1 and Fire 2, and then when you get to the firehouse, what's the first thing you tell them? Forget all that shit. Now we're going to teach you how to be firemen. Does an electrician do that when they get through their journeyman? No. Good God, until we start holding these for-profit companies accountable for what they're producing, we're never going to get better. We're not going to get better because we spend 12 weeks or whatever the hell it is to get a certification for us to tell you it doesn't matter because now that's wrong.
And the problem is
with the whole book thing.
Oh, I am too. And I have a whole class based on that. That's the Fire Academy and the Fire Floor. Why the disconnect? And the disconnect is that not everyone gets to go to 18 Engine in Columbus, Ohio. Not everyone gets to come to my firehouse where I'm invested in the young guys. You may go to an engine company that's not squared away, that does not have a standard. And it's a dead-end street for a young firefighter. Even the greatest firefighter coming out of Proby School or the academy could end up in one of those companies and then ruin their career. If they just would have went to 18 Engine, they would have been an all-star. And that's what the system is broken, because we have to come out with the standard, and there's no real standard when you graduate. It's just like, logically speaking, testable points, boom, 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 you get a grade and off you go. But there's no practical knowledge behind any of it.
No. But back, I went down a rabbit hole there. I apologize.
No, it's okay. It's good.
Back to the tick thing. I still like doing both. I like teaching them to tick, but I can tell you, we did a very poor job in my job when we got thermal imaging. You know what we did for training for thermal imaging? This is the button to turn it on.
Yeah.
Go. That was our school on thermal imaging. Everything we learned about thermal imaging was trial and error at the firehouse. Turned on the burner on the stove and all that shit. That was all. We had no formal training whatsoever on ticks. So guys like Andy Starnes that are out there doing great things, right? With ticks, to me, it's like I've been to like 4 different tick programs of his because I need it. We never had anything formal on thermal imaging, and we got a young Lieutenant Coriucci doing a great job, and he's kind of taking the bull by the horns, and he's putting together some programs and some hands-on programs for us because we had it all these years and never really had a program with it. So I think it's twofold. I think it's good. I think it's important. But I think we have to teach firefighters how to still find and locate fires in other means other than a thermal imaging camera.
Yeah, we were lucky enough to have Bobby Athanas and Bobby Kanabi develop our thermal imaging program for the FDNY. And hands down, I truly believe is probably the best training as far as thermal imaging ever to be given. A lot of the stuff they were doing was with a recorded tick at real fires. So that's the learning point. When you go to some of these classes, you have to be very careful about burn buildings and how the heat transfer within that burn building, how that affects the actual image of that thermal imaging camera, and how the heat transfer in that building is not so accurate when you start putting real fire, real walls, sheetrock, lath and plaster. It changes the game. So as far as the training when it comes to thermal imaging, the hands-on practical stuff, be very, very careful if you go to your local academy and you're playing around with that camera or whatnot. It could give you some false positives and false negatives as far as the camera. Take that training very, very seriously. But going back to being able to do it or find that fire without the camera, something I often say is that we hear a lot of things on the fire ground, doors being forced, windows being taken, right, roofs being cut. But until you actually stop and listen, click your regulator, hold your breath, you start to hear the fire crackling down the hallway that might be hidden behind a pocket door we couldn't find. It's all about, again, like you said in the beginning, slowing down the details, right? That's what all this is slowing down. We're so quick to think aggressive firefighting is moving quickly. In reality, aggressive firefighting is just doing your job. And on top of that, compiling all your mistakes into confidence. But this all comes from slowing down and observing the details. And that, to me, is what makes an aggressive firefighter or a good or great firefighter, is the details and is slowing down.
This might not be a popular statement, but I'm getting to the point where I hate the word aggressive. That's not aggressive. This is not. Define what the hell that means.
Exactly. I'll
give you another one, another bullshit term that drives me crazy. We got water on the fire. Well, what does that mean to you, Mick? Because I guarantee you it's not the same as it is to me that it is to Anthony in Mobile, Alabama, Todd Edwards in Atlanta, Georgia, Clyde Gordon in Houston, Texas. There's no term for that, but yet everybody wants to use that benchmark like it's something. Well, what the hell does it mean? Unless you define it, it doesn't mean anything to me. It doesn't mean anything. Unless your job has a true definition of what it is, you're tying up the radio. That's what it means to me, unless you have defined it with your people.
There's so much to what you just said. I want to go back up to the definition of aggressive and how I absolutely hate that word as well in today's fire service. I was at dinner at a conference, and I'm sitting across from Bob Presler. And Casual says to me, let me ask you a question. And I knew it was a test. I knew it was coming. He says, what does the word aggressive mean to you? What does aggressive firefighting mean? And I had this whole thing, like a series of mistakes, so this and that. And I'm like, all right, I nailed that. And he just looked at me and he goes, okay, good. He's like, but isn't it just doing your job? And that's all you had to say. And I was like, you know what? It is. Aggressive firefighting, if you want to put a definition to it, is doing your job. If you're not aggressive, you're not doing the job in reality, right?
Yeah.
So it's that simple. So we are abusing this word, and I think it comes down to just doing your job.
I couldn't agree more. You look at what those guys up at FDTN, Jimmy McCormick and Pressler and Mike Lombardo and Scotty Harden, and man, that whole Tim Collette, that whole crew is just unbelievable. To me, that's the best fire training in the world. It is up there at the Fire Department Training Network. And if you haven't been up there or haven't had a chance to take a class, don't sell yourself short. Don't sell yourself short. That is the best fire training in the world right now, in my opinion. But they focus on one thing. What do you think it is? Mastering the basics. Mastering basic skills. I'm not asking you to split atoms with friction loss and those 5 things. Right? We're doing 5 basic skills when we talk about positioning, selecting size and length, entry point, stretch, move and flow. Those are basic firefighting skills. But if we can get better than good at those, that's when we turn into a really aggressive company. We're aggressive because we can perform the basic task in a timely manner.
When you go to that training, don't you go to like 12 fires a day or something?
They're doing their fire camp now. It's an ungodly amount of fires. It is. You are going to figure it out real quick whether you want to do this or not, and you're going to get better. Period. You're going to get better.
It gives you the opportunity to make your mistakes and then fix it the next fire and then master it the next fire.
Under real conditions. These aren't. They're not out there to burn people's head off. They don't do that. But these are legit zero visibility fires, and it's real. And you're going to learn how to do your thing.
I haven't had a chance to get out there. One day I will. That's one of my bucket list things to do. I will have the opportunity in Fairhope, Alabama. We're doing a Southern Alabama hot training with Jimmy's coming down. And Bob's coming as well. And it's kind of like, it's a small, very small scale, but they're coming to bring their expertise in the actual, understanding of
burns
the
in cans
basics.
better than nobody can do a can fire better than those guys.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Not even close. There's no one even close, in my opinion.
But I want to circle back real quick to water on the fire, because that's something, like you said, it's not really stressed how I feel how important that really is, and it has to be something that's dialed in to what that really means and who can absolutely give that transmission. I feel the engine officer is the only person on the fire ground that should be allowed to give that transmission, because there's too much room for things to go wrong if it's a misinterpretation of what actually is happening in that fire room. You can have the line operating, but not actually have water on the seat of the fire. Two very different things. So if a chief is prompting the engine company officer to give that report, hey, do you have water on the fire? And if you're operating and you can't hear that radio because the line is operating and you're moving, you're flowing water, but you're not extinguishing the seat of the fire, nobody else should be able to say, yeah, chief, I think they have water on the fire. I understand the commitment to other people giving that because the chief is prompting it, and he's prompting it, and he's prompting it. If I'm not getting back to you as the engine officer, then we don't have water on the fire yet. Let me do the job. Because once we put water on the fire, I will now let you know, and then we can all breathe easy. But leading up to that, if it's a miscommunication, well, now as a truckie mindset, they hear water on the fire, they're going to start taking windows. And if we're not at that point of extinguishment, well, then the conditions change very, very rapidly.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, I'm blessed. I got my battalion chief is phenomenal. Battalion Chief Rick Hartrip, unfortunately, he's almost done, so I'm going to lose him soon. But we had a great relationship that I gave that when and we talked about it within the battalion, even though it's not defined in the division. Within the 3rd Battalion, they know when I say water on the fire, it's the seat of the fire. Because I've listened to fires, I've been to fires where guys have fire going up the outside of the building from a vented window or 2 vented windows. They start squirting water on the outside of the building of the siding or whatever's burning there. And what transmission do they give? Water on the fire. The seat of the fire is still burning, and it's burning well. When I give the transmission, 18 Battalion 3, water on the fire. Yeah, Steve, looks good. Or Steve, yeah, you put down a good bunch, but you still got fire in there. We're still getting a lot of pushing out here. You still don't have the seat. That is I can't see that. That transmission and that trust and relationship, I can't tell you how valuable, Mick, that is. That you have the relationship with your battalion chief, that they are your eyes, that he knows what I'm thinking, I know what he's thinking. When he tells me, yeah, Steve, you knocked down a good amount, but you still got fire in there. Okay, that's fine. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've done that. Like years ago, my old boss, hey, Chief, I think we got it before we had the water on the fire thing. Hey, Chief, I think we got it. Yeah, I don't know what fire you're on. This one's through the roof, right? Like, we put a nice stop on a couple of rooms, but we didn't realize we had extension and the whole attic was rocking. So
I like what you just said about you think you have it. The chief tells you you don't. That communication factor. But even as a young firefighter, you can be a probie. And if you're on the roof or a rear of a fire building and you hear the engine officer say, hey, Chief, we got water on the fire, but you're looking down off the roof and you see a room with fire out the window, get on the radio. Out of one roof, the engine one. You still have one more room in the rear. Have that communication. It's okay to tell the engine, no, you don't have water on the fire yet, because the engine officer really wants to hear that.
And I'm going to tell you this, to me, that's an urgent message.
Oh, yeah.
That's an urgent message to me, because I need to know that, and I need to know that now. I need to know that now, because am I out of position to get the other room? Do I need to call for a second line? All those things come into play. Did I pass that room and miss it? Have I done that? Hell yes, I've done that. I've missed rooms on fire before and went and put the other one out and turned around, there's fire behind you. Absolutely, I've done that. When you're going to give that transmission, if you've missed fire like that, that's an urgent message, and don't be scared to give the urgent message.
Yeah, because water on the fire tells me we're in field goal range. We're almost there.
Yeah.
We're about to score a touchdown, And if that's not the case, well, then we're going to have to readjust what play we're going to call next.
Yeah, and again, it may be. So I see guys do this all the time, and can agree with me, disagree with me, it doesn't matter. It's the same concept. You got fire on 2 floors. You got fire on ones in the back. You got fire on 2 blowing out 2 windows. We go into the first floor. We put it out. Do we run upstairs then? Is that the right thing to do? In an urban setting, for me, it's not. I should stay on that fire. And I've had it several times, and some of my guys get pissed off at me, and that's okay. But when there's another line there, there's another company there, 18 Battalion 3, go. Chief, first floor is knocked down. I need a second line to go to 2. We'll get you an all clear on 1. The right thing to do is the first line to stay on 1, and what do we do with the backup line? Where does it go? It goes to 2. Because inevitably what's going to happen, as soon as you leave that first fire, what's it going to do? It's going to kick back up. The next thing you know, you're going to trap 1 company or 2 companies upstairs. And how do I know this? Because I've done it. I screwed it up. And it's a hard, fast rule for me. If I've got a second company there, I'm going to stay on 1. We'll search 1 for you. We'll get you an all clear on 1. Right? You sit on the nozzle, make sure the fire's out, don't leave it. You go left, I'm going right. Whatever, go search. Right? Let the second line go to 2. It's just the right thing to do, because if you don't have it all the way out and you think you do, you're putting yourself in a pretty bad spot.
Yeah, I know staffing is always a problem when it comes to additional resources, but I think we have to remember that the backup line isn't necessarily an additional resource. It has to be stretched at every fire.
The backup line doesn't follow the attack line. That's not its job. The backup line protects the egress of the first line. How many times I've gone to 2 thinking the fire's on 2 and it's actually on 1?
Yeah.
It happens a lot. It happens. You're going to make that mistake as a young boss. You're going to miss it. But if that backup line follows you to 2, now you've got 2 companies up there and probably a truck. And all of a sudden we find the fire on 1. Now what? If the backup line's protecting the egress, they go put the fire out on 1. We're okay.
And it's much easier.
You shouldn't follow the attack line.
No, I totally agree. But it's much easier to stretch a dry line into position than to move a charged hose line down. So that's something to keep in mind too. If you find yourself out of position, balloon frame, you find yourself in the attic, don't try to reposition that line. You've already committed. But let's stretch a dry line into position and put water on the fire as quickly as possible. Again, seconds, right? So, all right, FDIC. Let's talk about FDIC real quick.
FDIC. We are doing a hybrid program this year. First year we've done it. We're doing a hybrid hot. Myself, Clyde Gordon, and Todd Edwards. We're going to do the Mid-Rise Mayhem class as a hybrid hot. So we'll have an hour or 2 of lecture, and then we're going to go out and we're going to actually do some stretches, different vertical option stretches. I think it's a great program for a training officer or any chiefs, battalion chief, anybody that's looking at tactically. And I think that's what I love about the program is there's 2 things we really pushed on this. One, we got Clyde Gordon, a great battalion chief, big city, Houston, Texas, goes to a lot of fires, went to a lot of fires, just retired. And he brings a ton of mid-rise experience from the chief's level, what he's looking for, what he's looking at. Todd Edwards was a chief. Todd Edwards was an engine captain, same concept. And then for me, just as a lowly lieutenant, I'm the practical application side. I'm the guy that does the majority of the stretches. I'm the guy that does tactically, where am I putting the first engine and why am I putting it there, the things I look at. What can I do ahead of time to make my job better? When we came up with the program, though, Mickey, one thing we said, anything we teach hands-on wise will be able to be accomplished with 2 people. It doesn't do me any good to teach 4 or 5 person tactics when the majority of the United States Fire Service is getting off the rig with 2 people. And that was one thing we kind of hung our hat on when we developed the program is this doesn't take 5 guys to accomplish. We can make a difference with what we show up. And here's the thing. You're on TikTok Live. Whether you like it or not, you're on TikTok Live, and either you're going to do something or you're going to get filleted online. So the public expects us to do something. What's your plan A? What's your plan B? You got to have a system and a place to start. That's all we're trying to get out with that program. So we're excited to do the hybrid hot. Chief Dave Rhodes from engineering said, hey, man, we want you to give it a shot. So we're excited to bring that program to FDIC this year.
And if you don't know Clyde, Todd, or Steve, I consider all 3 of you very, very good friends of mine. And I can tell you right now, their personalities alone coming together into one class, it'll be one of the best classes offered at FDIC because they're 3 men that are very honest, they're kind, and kindness goes a long way in this job. And they can admit humility, all three of them. So I think that's really, really, really going to be a great class. And if you are going to be FDIC, the mid-rise thing is it's spreading across the country. That's a class you need to check out for sure. So you get any conferences locally? Any micro conferences?
We got coming. We're going to be in Parker County, Texas, coming up November.
Okay.
I think it's already sold out. And then I know we're in Beaufort, North Carolina. Lecture, right? That bill, we're doing lectures. It's Todd, myself, Clyde, and Mo Davis. 4 4-hour lectures, 2 days worth. And North Carolina there the week before Parker County. And then Kurt's got his December conference. And then we're rolling. We're starting into next year. We're booking next year. So if somebody's interested in a program, get the dates soon, because we're getting busy with this program. It's funny you talk about everybody's going to have these things. I was in Broken Bow, Oklahoma a couple years ago. Population's like 2,000, 4,000. Great little town in the middle of Oklahoma. Or not in the middle, but southeast corner of Oklahoma there. I'm starting to talk about mid-rises a little bit. They're like, yeah, we really don't have those. As we're leaving to drive back to the airport, 4 hours to the closest airport, what do I see? 4 4-story buildings being built on the edge of town. So that's what I'm saying. It's not an urban or suburban thing. It's coming everywhere. These people have realized they can put up 4, 5, 6-story buildings and continue the income off the same thing they had 3 single-family homes. So I think it's a thing. It's not going to go away.
Yeah, and they're built like shit. So you got to get water quickly on the fire.
Yeah. That's a fact. Maybe one of these days we'll do another one where all 3 of us come on and we can dive deep into mid-rises, because it's definitely a thing we can do.
No, I'd love to have you guys on, because honestly, that's one of the areas that I don't know much about, and I want to be educated, and you guys are out there doing it. And for those that can't make it the FDIC, I know that it's not for everyone. There's so many micro conferences, like Steve just said. I mean, you and Todd are on the road like all year long doing this. I mean, Todd never stops. I don't know how he does it, but
he's retired. He forgets I got to work 48 to be able to do that, and I'm getting too damn old for that.
Yeah. Find a conference near you, because these guys are out there doing it. Again, the nicest guys in the business. Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. And
thank you, Mickey. I appreciate you, and we'll talk soon, and I can't wait to hook up again.
All right, brother. Thank you.